We are live. We are live. So, hello, audience. Welcome. This is really the beginning of a series of occasional interviews, discussions involving Ibrahim Kazerooni and myself, Rob Prince. We've entitled this particular talk, Clowns, Police, and Military Veterans, the Storming of the White House, Domestic and International Considerations. What we want to address today was the events of January 6th, the storming of Congress, and what we're referring to this now in our discussions as a singular event in American political history. A singular event is something that really changes everything. And as such, we want to look at the different aspects of that. So, Ibrahim, could you elaborate a little bit? What is a singular event, and does January 6th qualify as such?
Well, good evening to our listeners and viewers. Good evening to you, Rob. The phrase singular event, I believe, as far I stand to be corrected, but as far as I have read about it during the days at Aleph School of Theology, it was framed or coined by Deleuze, and he calls singular event, this is his definition. A singular event is an event that displays a particular distinct force that is irreducible to other happening. That's in his understanding, Deleuzian theory of events. Although he moves on to define Jesus' crucifixion as an example for it, but his understanding of singular event is an event that, as you indicated, Rob, that the before and after is not the same. Now, I may be naive, but I believe the U.S., for the U.S. and people here in the United States might see January the 6th, the last Wednesday's event to be so unique that one could call it a singular event. But if the attacking or the storming of the Congress, trying to stop a smooth transfer of power, democratic power from one individual to another, or preventing the Congress, the House as well as the Senate, to go about their democratic business, might be considered as a singular event, but not for the rest of the world. The rest of the world has been dealing with this kind of crisis that has been dashed to them by the U.S. in one way or another, where their democracies have been destroyed for decades, if not call it a century. One could list a number of these examples. I was thinking about this idea of singular event this afternoon, and it reminded me of a comment made by Aimé Césaire, the Martinique philosopher, Francophone, that in his discourse on colonialism, he says that Europeans tend to throw their arms in the air and say fascism or anything else, despotism not acceptable, or the torture and everything that is happening, while these events are designated for the rest of the world. When it comes to European, they find it very difficult to swallow. So what these people, thugs, did on Wednesday, it's something that has been happening to the rest of the world. It might be singular event, something that the before and after might be different, but when we consider the rest of the world suffering from it, I don't think they consider this to be a singular event. What do you think, Rob?
Well, it's as if in this strange and unfortunate way, the United States is joining the rest of the world. This is what people have to put up with again and again and again. Um,
There was a comment made by a Pakistani on the gentleman on I believe Facebook, or he said, I think when you think about it, he said the Americans have been attacking the rest of the world, and they finally run out of countries to attack. They had to go back to their own country and attack their own system. So,
right. Yeah. I do see this as a singular event, and what I mean by this is whatever happens over this next period, there's really no going back to what was, and that what we're experiencing here is a fundamental shift in the politics of the nation, and that will be with us for a long time, regardless of what gets played out over the next few weeks. We've entered into new and unknown territory. It's a pretty unique event, needless to say, whatever one wants to call it, a coup, an insurrection. But whatever it was, it's at the very heart of the American system, and strangely enough, incited by the very president of the United States, who today was just impeached for the second time during these 4 years. You know, when I think about this, thousands of, I don't know what else to call them, but thugs that stormed the Congress. Some of them I would refer to as clowns. Others much more insidious, with real knowledge and plans of how to conduct such activities, and then they walk away from it scot-free. And this is very dangerous, that what we're seeing is there's very, very little accountability. Ibrahim, before going into this more, you mentioned earlier that you had a meeting, you and a number of religious figures in Michigan, with the governor of your state, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. For those unfamiliar, Ibrahim Kazerooni lives in the Detroit area. You live in Detroit, actually, right?
yes, just border of the West Detroit and
right.
Dearborn.
And he is an imam at what's called the Islamic Center of North America, which is the largest mosque in North America. And Gretchen Whitmer, isn't Michigan one of the places where these vigilante types stormed the Capitol and kind of a preparation for what we saw in Washington, D.C.? And isn't Whitmer the governor that some of them plan to kidnap?
Sure. Yes. It's an irony that, well, first of all, let me give some background information. We have regular conversation on Zoom and on sometimes on other public media with the governor. She invites religious scholars. Sometimes we invite her to discuss this matter. And that last Thursday night, there was this meeting that we were trying to discuss various issues with her. Unfortunately, she wasn't forthcoming. I was trying to explain to her that irrespective of what we call this event, whether it's a coup or insurrection or whatever it is, one cannot deny the fact that these group of people represent a significant part or component of American society. So how on earth, as a Democrat, she thought that Biden is going to neutralize or deal with this issue? Unfortunately, she was not prepared to answer any question beyond the fact that Biden is going to be the president for all. That wasn't sufficient. We wanted to find out exactly how the Biden administration is going to deal with these people, particularly the point that you raised earlier, that this probably the first time in the history of American democratic system that such a number break into the White House and the Congress, and they can get away with it. That's the most painful part of it, that they can get away with it. This part, I wanted to find out what does this represent, and how, if these people decide to take the law into their own hand and attack the minorities, including the Muslim community as well as other minorities, how Biden administration is going to deal with it. But unfortunately, we didn't get anything from it.
You know, that's unsettling to hear that kind of response from someone I respect for at least what I know about her as a governor, and also sympathize with what she had to go through. A rehearsal for January 6th that took place in Michigan, essentially. And what it just makes me think about is the degree to which what we're seeing is that we're living in a failed state. No, we've been hearing this term "failed state" in the universities and political economy. They talk about failed states, and think about this: we're living in a country that is incapable of providing for the basic needs of its citizenry, that has a long history of racism and white supremacy that it's not been able to deal with effectively. And what comes to me is just how weak, how terribly fragile, and even rotten in some cases are the country's institutions. This is supposed to be, the most powerful nation in the world. Look at this.
Rob, I've been thinking about this. If the situation was, say, we had 4,000, 5,000 Caucasians, mixture of KKKs and all kinds, after the event, it transpired that they have been calling for move towards Washington for weeks.
Yes.
They had learned from Arab Spring how to use the media, emails, Facebook, etc., WhatsApps, and so on. So they have been sending messages. It's not something that happened instantaneously. But that underscores the depth of racism that exists in the United States. As white, you have privileges, and non-white, none. If the situation was reversed and a group of, say, African American, Indian, Arabs, or anybody else got together and stormed the houses of Congress, what would have happened to them?
We know what would have happened.
Yes. Would we have seen the police actually opening the gate for them to go in? Or they would have shot on the spot?
Of course.
So with this kind of division or fracture that we have within our community, it's a serious question that we really need to pose to the new administration, how on earth they are going to deal with this. And that Biden is going to be the president for all is not sufficient as an answer.
There's one of the consequences of the fact that they all walked out the way they did is they're increasingly brazen and aggressive. Look how they're talking again openly of disrupting the inauguration of armed demonstrations in 50 states. I mean, this is well known now, not only here but around the world. And so, what I find a little bit troubling, Ibrahim, is that we're starting to hear from, I don't know that we've heard it from Biden himself, but from a number of the Democrats. They talk about we need to heal the rift, national reconciliation, and that kind of talk from where I'm sitting, it only emboldens these insurrectionary types. What do you think about all this talk about reconciliation?
You see, Rob, I really find it difficult to understand. If we think about the rationale of what we call these group and the mindset of the rest of the American population. The rest of the American population, their way of thinking is based on facts and figures. democratic institutions, smooth transfer of power. These people, their way of thinking is based on personal feeling and personal perception. We think this. And by the way, one of the problems that we have as a consequence of 4 years of Trump's being in charge, that Trump hijacked and literally neutralized the Republican Party and turned it into a party of his own.
Yes.
It's a Trump party. So they are supporting Trump party. There is a unique mindset in their head that they are, how you're going to talk about reconciliation with these mindsets that are polar opposite with each other. There is no, talk about reconciliation and so on are meaningless at this stage. What we really need, it's the same repeat of history with Obama.
Yes.
Obama was wishy-washy with regard to certain issues, really did not have the backbone to make a decision between the crisis within the nation. And Biden is going to repeat the same thing.
Well,
talk of reconciliation.
Well, hopefully not. It's certainly it's the opposite of what we need right now.
Yeah, what we really need is a clear, aggressive, and decisive step to stop these people from taking control of law of order and literally derailing the democratic system.
Yes, and I'm thinking both about the next few weeks and also about the first year of the Biden administration. These next few weeks, both leading up to and after the inauguration, are really a critical time, and they will define the Biden presidency. I have a local friend here. He's a retired union organizer. His name is Mike Wilczak, here in Colorado, and he posted on social media, and I thought it was profound what he said. Unless this situation is dealt with and taken back in hand, quote, there will be other attacks on government buildings and staff, and on Jews and Muslims and others. And I agree with him. So the stakes are really high, and in terms of watching how the government, the active role of the government in stopping this nonsense in this coming period.
Rob, the impetus for posing the question to the governor was exactly the same point, because these people had gone through a dry run in a number of states and attacked the state capital. And as you said quite correctly, they wanted to kidnap even the governor herself. And they went into the state capital. If they were dealt with then aggressively and strongly, then we would not have had this crisis. But once you go through a number of states and you are allowed to do whatever you want without any... The report came out a few days ago that some of these individuals were caught carrying guns and ammunitions that are illegally. It were not theirs. They just simply purchased it and it's been not registered anywhere. Illegally carrying guns and ammunition.
Oh, look, Ibrahim,
what are we calling for?
The scenarios we've read about what their plans were far beyond that. There are articles that came out in the last few days. They had different scenarios. Some of them included kidnapping members of Congress. Some of them, quite frankly, I saw this in Huffington Post, not exactly, if you like, a left source. They're talking about killing members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans. Yes. So I mean, this kind of talk is outrageous. And from where I'm sitting, it's really clear that Trump needs to be made an example of, legally, of course. Whether it's removing him from office, impeachment, and not just impeachment, but the conviction of the impeachment, or taking to task legally taking him to task legally once he leaves the presidency. I think that this is very, very important.
It's a serious issue, Rob, that the head of the political, call it the president of United States, that swears to the keeping of the Constitution and protecting the Constitution, stands in an office with a group of his own family and friends, quite happy and jubilant, watching these pictures as they were unfolding.
A party.
The basis of democracy being attacked.
All right, Ibrahim, we don't have a lot of time, so let's shift gears to the impact that this is going to have internationally. Now, on one level, it's pretty clear that the influence of the United States in terms of its foreign relations is really going to suffer as a result of all this. I see it very, very difficult for the Biden administration to implement a foreign policy when the rest of the world is looking at the United States and either in horror or just in complete ridicule. How do you see these events influencing foreign policy? As somebody,
I believe we briefly touched upon the national level, the consequences within the national level, but I believe the international consequence and the global consequence is much harder and much more severe. As you quite correctly indicated, the past event, particularly U.S. policy in the Middle East post Arab Spring, has clearly proved that United States has no plan A and no plan B. Right. In the sense that so far, United States does not have anything at all to show for many years of getting involved, whether it's occupation of Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, or anywhere else. And U.S. is unable to literally detach itself from the crisis and sinks deeper and deeper into the quagmire. Despite all of these, the failure of United States in the region, at least there was an image that the United States has as a greatest nation, the democratic nation, powerful nation. Militarily, it was muted, but at least that image. And unfortunately, the storming of the Capitol as the basis of, U.S. Center of political power has literally split open that image. And United States has lost that image. And even European medias began to make a comment about the consequence of this, particularly in what we call in creating asymmetrical power relationship. Once Biden wants to go and say negotiate with Putin, the Chinese, the Indians, and any other country in the world, we have become literally the laughing stock.
Yes, when I look at, of course, Ibrahim and I, we've done for the last 11 years a monthly program on U.S. Middle Eastern policy. But when I look at that policy, it really boils down to two themes. One is, if you like, military, all the bases and things like that, and the other is sanctions. But when you think about that policy, it's a defensive policy. There's no vision there. There's no sense of, well, how do we help the region in its development issues and in other ways. It's completely defensive. And now what the United States has lost in these last 2 weeks is what's referred to as soft power. It's influences a symbol of prosperity of democracy that has been tarnished to a very, very great degree. Ibrahim, we said that we're going to try and keep these programs to 25 minutes. It's 25 minutes. So I'd like to wrap it up right now. Do you have any kind of a last statement you would like to make before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back on living in the United States. I would like, in the light of the critical nature of what we have seen during the past, well, at least last Wednesday, I really would hope that the incoming administration would deal with the situation and take it seriously. Otherwise, not only would neutralize Biden with any of his policies, it's going to create such a mess as far as interrelationship or community relationship and structure within the United States.
All right. Well, I agree with that. Dear listeners, this is the first of a number of programs, and we'll see you in the not too distant future. Ibrahim, pleasure seeing you, and we'll see you again.
It's my pleasure, and good evening to everyone.
Yes, good evening. Bye-bye.